We're back on The Big Show talking to one of my favourite people, Gloria Hunniford, always lovely to talk to. Let's backtrack a bit. I've done you a couple of times down the line since, but the last time we met face to face...
Excuse me?
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Do you want to rephrase that?
Well, you know, we're old friends now. I know we're not picking out curtains, but there you are. The last time we met was shortly after Karen passed away, and just seeing you there devastated was so sad to me because, I mean, she was your world, really, wasn't she?
Well, she was my world as well as my other children in my family circle. But I mean, Karen was, bias aside, a very unusual, quirky girl. And I can categorically tell you that she was the woman that I loved talking to best in this whole world because she had an unusual take on life. She was very entertaining. She made me laugh all the time. And I not only loved her, of course, as I would as a mother, but I really, really liked her. And therefore, she's a huge loss.
And of course, when we look at her legacy, she's done two things. She's left you great-grandchildren, which we're going to get on and talk about in detail in a moment, and also raise the profile of what she died of. It's a huge price, though, for you to pay as a family, isn't it?
Well, of course it is, but, you know, there are so many families all over the country who are going through the same thing as we've had to go through and continue to. And every time I see another soldier brought home from Afghanistan, I'm right with the parents, because it doesn't matter how your loss is generated, you know, whether it's from illness or an accident or serving at the front line, the loss is the same. And it is devastating to lose a child, and particularly around this time of the year when we're remembering, and I know the emphasis of the British Legion this year is Afghanistan and current wars rather than, and of course we'll always remember the first two world wars. I don't mean instead of, but as well as. But, you know, it is shocking when you watch the news sometime and you realise how much loss is going on in this country as we speak. And when I lost Karen, because it, you know, when I say it wasn't something that I'd ever thought about, obviously because I knew she was ill, I did think about it from time to time. But as a parent, you pray and you hope that you will never lose a child before you go. So when I lost Karen, and it was something that I never ever expected to obviously happen, and you pray it'll never happen, that you lose a child, I thought at that moment that I was the only parent. I felt like the only parent who'd ever lost a child, because it goes so deep and so searingly. And I was desperate, you know, to talk to another parent who'd lost a child, because even those around you, I felt like saying, but you don't understand. You know, I gave birth to this child. I carried this child for 9 months. So with the result, you know, when people started to kindly write, I then realised, of course, how many people had gone through it. You know, obviously, I mean, it's an obvious thing to say in a way, but some people have gone through it not once but twice. And then your understanding of life and how sometimes it deals you a cruel blow is expanded. And so therefore, I have great empathy with a lot of these parents throughout the country at the moment who are losing children by one means or another.
You had to grieve in public and you chose to speak to people like me. When you look back on that now, do you think that was the right choice? Did that help you in any way?
Yes, it does help. And I have a great adage that says that people never die if they live on the lips of the living. And I think what is shocking sometimes is when a child loses, you know, a parent, and then nobody ever talks about that parent. I have so many case studies of people who write to me who say, you know, I lost my dad, you know, when I was 4, whatever, but I never saw a photograph of him. I was never allowed to talk about him because I had a new stepdad. And my adage anyway is that people never die if they live on the lips of the living. And because we have a foundation for Karen, when I say I enjoy talking about her, I of course have to qualify that. I wish I wasn't talking about her in that sense. But now that has happened, it is a therapy for me to have a foundation in Karen's name. You know, like this year, you know, Hard Rock did this big night at the O2 for breast cancer. We help charities that deal with all kinds of cancer, but during the month of October, it was for breast cancer. And, you know, I looked around at this fabulous night with strong women on stage, you know, singing for women who are not so strong at the moment. And I just thought Karen would be so proud of that. And she would have loved that concert, you know. And, you know, we have our Strictly Tea Dancing soon. We have an event where some of the couples from Strictly Come Dancing come and give exhibition. And we have, you know, sticky buns and tea and the odd glass of champagne. And I bring Karen's children there, and I bring all my grandchildren there. But, you know, they have fun. And I just think, well, isn't it good that we can do something in a positive way that helps people throughout the country, but do it against this well of negativity of losing Karen?
It's very interesting, actually. You just brought up a thought that had kind of passed me by. I went to see the parents of my best mate who passed away 2 years ago, very recently, due to a brain tumour, and they wrote me a lovely note. I took her an orchid, and she said, you're the only person who comes around and talks about him because everybody else is too scared. And that's very strange. I didn't really understand what they meant until you just described it there.
You see, I wrote in my last book about exactly that, because to say that it's quite offensive is maybe a bit strong, but it almost is quite offensive when you've lost somebody so dear to you, whether it's a parent or a husband, partner, child, whatever the scenario, and your friends cross sometimes to the other side of the road and just skirt round it and don't talk to you about it. You feel like saying, hello, excuse me, I can't talk about the latest shopping or, the latest dress or something when this has happened to me. And I remember one example, the husband of one of my best friends in life, and he touched my arm when he was in our house the day after Karen died, and he said to me, he said, I don't like talking about these things. And I actually turned around to him and I said, you know what, you're a very intelligent man, well educated. Maybe you should. Maybe you actually could say, like my bin men said, I'm sorry. That's all it needs.
Yeah. I know recently during a bereavement in the family, somebody turned around and said, it was too hard to visit him in hospital. You think, well, it's all about you then, is it?
Yeah, that's the thing. But anyway, I'm not being judgmental here. I'm just sort of speaking as it happened to me. And all I'm saying to people is never be afraid to say, I loved your sister, or, I'm really sorry you're going through it. People appreciate it. And it's silly things that you remember. It's like, I remember a friend of mine ringing up and saying, we want to come and see you. And I wasn't in the right space at that point, because very shortly after Karen died, and he said, no, I just want to drop off some food. And I'm thinking, why are you bringing me food? It was the best thing ever. We ate that food for days afterwards because your brain goes out of kilter.
And it shows they cared.
Yes, absolutely. So it's silly things like that you really...
You mentioned that big concert for the Karen Keating Foundation, and two of my mates are part of a group that really have helped you this year. Maz Murray and Gina Murray are two of the most phenomenal West End stars that have got a new single out, and I know it's on iTunes now.
I love them, and they're actually singing at our tea dance as well. And Maz has had her baby, of course. There she was up on the stage at the O2, and her baby was due days away. And yes, they made a single called, it is that song, Woman. I can do da-da-da, hang them out in the line. That song. I don't remember all the words, but anyway. Because I'm a woman, WOMAN.
I've got a future for you, Gloria Hunniford.
I know. But they were so good. They did that for Karen's Foundation. And, it's just lovely, as I said before, when women band together and do things for other women who are not in a strong position at all.
Let's play that single now, and we'll come back with our remaining moments with Gloria Hunniford.
I love it.
We're back on your favourite local radio station, talking to the new author of a book called Glorious Grandparenting, having the time of your life with your grandchildren. Gloria Hunniford is our special guest. A few things then about your grandkids, especially those from Karen. Let's start with those first. How are the boys doing?
They're doing great, actually. Charlie is 16, and I start the book off with being at his party, because I realised that day when I looked around and saw all the extended family and modern family, I thought to myself, this is how it should be for grandchildren. I think, programs like Who Do You Think You Are prove that as an adult, you want to know your background, you want to know your family, you want to know your uncles, your cousins, as well as your immediate circle. And I looked that day and everybody was there, aunts, uncles, stepmothers, step grannies, real grannies, blood grannies. And I just thought, this is it. And on that day, I'd given Charlie an album for his 16th birthday. And because I'm the only person left who knows his mother's life story from beginning to end, I got all the pictures from his birth, and I had somebody with much better handwriting than me, time and date it all, and put the years in, so that when did he live in Barnes, what was the name of the school, what year was he in Australia, who is this person, what day did his parents get married, where did they get married. I'd like to have that book myself now about my parents and my grandparents. And so I do feel that grandparents have a great contribution to make. I'm not obviously talking about photographs, but I'm talking about the infilling of lives and family circles. And just as grandparents get the most enormous joy and energy from grandchildren, I think it's good for grandchildren as well to have the solidarity of grandparents, particularly at times of divorce or death or separation or whatever the case may be. So this book is about the joys that I have experienced and do experience of being a grandparent. But it also is taking up the gauntlet, sadly, for those grandparents who aren't allowed to see their grandchildren. Now, I'm lucky, I see mine all the time, and I'm very hands-on. But I only discovered last year that there are absolutely no legal rights whatsoever for grandparents in this country. And we're not talking about the right to bring up your grandchildren or have an influence. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about simply the right to see your grandchildren and to build some kind of relationship with them. So I have joined the Grandparents Federation to lobby Downing Street to try and get a change in the law.
Well, I was disgusted about some scumbag journalist decided to write an article in the papers recently, taking something you'd said in the book out of context, that you didn't see the kids anymore.
I know.
Why do they need to do that?
I don't know that. I don't understand that either, because I went to great lengths in all parts of the book to say that it's because I see my grandchildren all the time that I am taking up the gauntlet. And yet the headline was, I don't see Karen's boys anymore, which is a total lie. And I was furious at that. But luckily enough, Russ and his new wife, Sally, they know that I don't make up the headlines, so the content of the book. But you're right. Modern journalism is that they take anything out of context, give it a line, in some cases a very cheap line, just to sell a few newspapers. So not good. On the other hand, in this case, I always let Russ read anything, and my son, Paul, who has two lovely boys as well. I always let them read everything up front in terms of manuscript before anything's printed, because you have to, know.
It's always lovely getting you on, and the great thing about you is you always seem to be in a good place. You've had hard times, but you come back fighting. Right now, aside from obviously Karen, who you would prefer to be here, you've got the memories, you've got the thoughts with the grandkids. Are you at a good place in your life?
I am pretty good, actually, at the moment, because, as you say, for all the obvious reasons that you've just mentioned, but I am seeing Karen's spirit living on in her children, which in a strange way is a privilege to watch. As I say, I wouldn't want it that way for obvious reasons, but they bring me great comfort, as do all my other grandchildren, of course. I want to include them all. But life is busy. We're doing Rip Off Britain for BBC, for BBC One. We're doing 20 programmes this year, so that'll run for a whole month coming up to Christmas. And we are chronicling and doing a lot of filming at the moment as to how people feel they're being ripped off, whether you're talking about energy bills or holidays, travel. I got ripped off myself lately because I don't do computer, but there again, I am learning through BBC First Click. But I turned up at the airport, and Steve and I were charged 40 quid each. And they wanted £160 for extra luggage because I didn't realise that they only took 15 kilos.
Oh, yeah. Good luck.
But me at 15 kilos when I'm working? Ridiculous.
I did a line on air about 6 months ago when I flew with Ryanair, and I got to the airport and, like you, stupidly hadn't printed off my ticket. And I'd bought the ticket and I'd got it in my hand, but not the right ticket.
Right.
So I got to the counter and she said, "You're going to have to give me £20 for that." I said, "Hang on, love. I've just given you 50 quid to fly with your airline. I have the document to prove it." That's like going in a pub, buying a pint of beer and him saying, "Can I have £20 for the glass, please?"
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Don't get
and getting
me
worse.
started.
And the trouble is that other airlines are following suit because they're seeing that it can be a source of revenue.
I know.
So that's what we're dealing with Rip Off Britain. It's marvellous.
Well, I hope you get a good campaign going with that, and I'll back you all the way. I spend all my time slagging off that kind of thing because it's underhanded. It's creepy. I don't
all
like
right,
it.
tell me how you're being ripped off apart from airlines.
Oh, you want to speak to the bosses here? Have you seen my latest contract? Rip off. Don't get me started. Gloria Hunniford, I always love talking to you. Thanks so much for coming on the programme.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you again soon.
And of course, your new book is out now. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.